I'm Tony Northrup. I've been a professional photographer for more than 25 years. I wrote the world's #1 best-selling photography book, Stunning Digital Photography, and I've helped close to 1 million photographers learn photography and choose their cameras. And I'm going to help you. I'm going to make it very simple. I'm going to ask your budget and what you shoot, and then I'm going to make a single recommendation for a camera and lens that will get the best results. I've never accepted money or free gear from any camera or lens manufacturer, and that's a pretty rare thing nowadays. I want you to find your gear as fast as possible. So use the description to jump to a different part of the video or to get the links to the specific camera that you're interested in. I do not want you to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on camera gear and not be happy with the results. So I'm going to tell you some things you should know ahead of time. The inexpensive camera with its kit lens, you're probably not going to get better results than you would out of a new smartphone for general types of photography. Now, it might not be as satisfying an experience, however. There's something wonderful about having a flip screen that lets you use different angles and having actual physical buttons and dials about the whole experience. But if you are a person just looking to get better results than your smartphone, and you want to say spend less than $1,000, you'd probably be better off just getting an upgraded smartphone. And I will make recommendations for the best smartphone cameras in just a second. If you get any of these cameras, be aware they will seem kind of like primitive technology to you. The menu systems are archaic and difficult to understand. For example, they don't have a search function. Getting files from your cameras to your smartphones is clumsy and a little bit frustrating at best. This might seem crazy, but the easiest way to get pictures from your cameras to a computer or a smartphone is to take the memory card out like a tiny floppy disk and to physically transfer the files. If that seems ponderous to you, then you might want to just invest some time into learning how to get better pictures out of your smartphone. And again, I will help you with that. Before you buy a camera, you should be prepared to commit hours, days, weeks, months into learning how to get the best results. If that sounds appealing to you, if you want to develop a new skill, if you want to learn the art of photography, then please jump in. I have lots of materials. But if you just want quick results without having to think about it, again, you're probably going to be happiest with a new smartphone. In the beginning, when you get a new camera, you're actually going to make some mistakes. They're very complex. And so some pictures won't turn out. Do not buy a new camera the day before you have to go shoot pictures of your son's wedding. If you're willing to study and practice, this can be a lifelong hobby and passion for you like it is for me. You should buy a camera if you are looking for a hobby like that, or if you are taking pictures of sports or wildlife. Those are things smartphones currently do not do well. You should also buy a traditional camera like this if you want to get into serious portraiture. However, you're probably going to be happier with a smartphone if your budget is under $1,000. If you just want better pictures and you don't care about buttons and dials and the feeling of photography, if you do not like to read the manual for stuff, trust me, you're not going to have a good time with a traditional camera. If you don't make big prints, like bigger than 8x10, if you're just sharing on social media, the quality differences for most things, except for sports, wildlife, or portraiture, probably won't make any difference. If you don't use a computer, these are still a little bit clumsy to connect to the smartphone. So first, I'm going to recommend better, higher quality smartphones. And if you're an iPhone person, if you're an Apple person, you will get better results with an older Pro model than you will with a newer non-Pro model. The iPhone is an excellent general purpose camera. Look, even though I have dozens of cameras, each serving different specific purposes in my life, I still use my iPhone camera a lot because it does some things so well. And I always have it with me, and it's waterproof and it allows instant sharing. It's worth it to get a good, high quality smartphone, even if you're also getting a camera. Now, if you're not an iPhone person, great news. The Samsung S22 Ultra is an amazing camera as well as being a smartphone. Now, it's not an iPhone, but if you're using Android, the telephoto lens on this is absolutely astounding. You can get beautiful pictures of the moon and faraway subjects. Again, except for sports, wildlife, and portraiture, the S22 is enough camera for most people. Now, before I recommend general cameras, I want to talk to those of you who like the idea of a camera that is fun and fashionable. If you're not obsessed with just getting the best results, but you actually want to enjoy the process of photography, check out the Fujifilm XT and X Pro series of cameras. I own and use these cameras regularly. If I am going out with my wife on a date and I might want to snap a few pictures, I grab one of these Fujis because they have these beautiful analog dials, and I have these nice leather cases from Kaza Leather. They look good, slung around my neck or my shoulder, and they're fun to use. And they produce good results too. Now, I'm not going to recommend Fuji as the best camera in any specific category, but they are excellent general purpose cameras for those of you who are in it as a hobby. And if you're a serious photographer like me, you might consider getting one of these Fujis as a second camera for those times when you're more concerned about having fun than producing the most optimal, perfect results. Now I'm going to list general purpose still and video cameras at different price points. When you find the budget that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's the camera you should get. You probably have to spend a little bit more than you expect because cameras are actually really, really expensive. It's an expensive hobby. Now, I'm going to be recommending a lot of used cameras because I want to keep the prices down. The links that you see here, the SDP.io links, link to Amazon or KEH. KEH is a used seller that offers 180-day warranties and 21-day return periods. If you buy used somewhere else, there's a good chance that it could be a scammer. Now, I generally trust sellers on Amazon too, so I link there. But if you go to Facebook Marketplace or even eBay, I find a lot of scammers there, and so I tend to just avoid them. So no matter where you buy it from, if you buy it used, buy it from a reputable seller, but I totally trust KEH. They're not sponsoring this, but they do sponsor other videos. Now, the lowest price point I can find is about $300 to $700 for a camera and lens. And I'm recommending a used Canon 70D. This is a great general purpose DSLR. That means it has an optical viewfinder and a mirror in it. It operates more like an old school camera, but it's completely functional and you can always click on live view if you want an actual digital display. Screen flips forward. We used it for more than a year to shoot for our YouTube channel, so I know that it's an excellent video camera. And if possible, pick up the Canon 18 to 135 lens. It's not the standard kit lens. You'll see a lot with the 18 to 55 lens. The 18 to 135 is much more generally useful. A step up from that, a newer camera is at $900. You can get a used Sony A6400. And if possible, pick up the 18 to 135 kit lens. The A6400, nice and compact, smaller than that Canon, has a flip up screen here. And it's capable of doing just about anything, including sports and wildlife with the right lenses. If you have a few more bucks at $1,100, I recommend the Canon RP. How much do I like the Canon RP? I have 7 in this studio, including what I'm recording it on now. It is a full frame camera. So the actual sensor that captures light is more than twice the size of those other 2 cameras. And that means that, especially if you upgrade the lens, you have much better potential for performance for things like low light capabilities. If you want something serious and you might be doing some sports, check out the Canon R6. That's actually a previous generation camera. They just released the R6 Mark II, but that means that the used prices are down a little bit and it's still an incredibly capable general purpose camera. We also use the R6 for a lot of our YouTube videos, so the video capabilities are very good, but sports and even some wildlife, very capable camera. A step up from that, adding 45 megapixels compared to 20 megapixels, is the Canon R5. This is going to produce much sharper results. And Canon's system in general, I find it to be very easy for people to pick up and learn compared to other cameras like Sony or Nikon. There's a flip forward screen, which is useful for everything from taking the family portrait that you want to be in to making YouTube videos like this. And it can do great wildlife, sports, portraits, anything. It is expensive, but if you have the budget, it is a camera that can last you many years. All of these cameras require lots of study. I have lots of free tutorials at sdp.io/tutorials for any camera, including the iPhone. I also have written many books on photography and post-processing. Stunning Digital Photography is the #1 photography book in the world for the last decade. It's not just a book, it has 20 hours of video, so even if you hate reading, you can just watch the video. But for best results, read, watch a short video, and then do the practices in it, and I promise, people have gone from total beginner to pro. And then you have to edit your photos. People use either Lightroom or Lightroom Classic. Use Lightroom if you use your smartphone to edit, or use Lightroom Classic if you use a computer. I have books on both of those, and they both include a lot of videos. What if you need a camera primarily for video, such as a teen who's making social media and wants to get better video quality out of it? Here's my suggestions at different price points. I'm back to the Canon 70D. What an excellent video camera. And if you're going to use this for social media, I suggest picking up the Sigma 16mm f1.4. That'll just give you beautiful effects. A more modern camera is the Sony ZV-E10. Sony has a ton of great lenses that you can use with it, but you can start with the kit lens and upgrade those lenses later. At the $1,100 price point, check out the Canon RP. That's what I'm recording this video on. And a step up from that is the Canon R6. A step up from that is the Canon R6. I discussed these cameras earlier. These are also great general purpose cameras for stills. Here's a camera I recommend only for video, the Sony a7S III. This is what we use to record outside of the studio. It's a very powerful video camera, and the price is high, but the results are professional and unmatched, and actually it's not bad for stills either. Now I'm going to cover what cameras you should buy for landscape photography. These are people who don't necessarily need to shoot video. They aren't shooting portraits, so they don't need things like eye detect autofocus. For smartphones, I recommend the Pixel 6 Pro, or better yet, the Pixel 7 Pro, which has a lot of effects like long exposures, things for waterfalls and panning shots that can make for really beautiful landscapes that aren't that easy to recreate on other types of smartphones. For conventional cameras, I'm going to start at a fairly high price point. If this is too high for you, then go back to the general purpose cameras like the Canon 70D. They're just fine for landscapes. But these are specialized tools, high resolution cameras that can make really large prints like those big Ansel Adams prints that you always see. If you can scrape together about $1,400, find a used Nikon D800E. 36 megapixels, an incredible sensor that still holds up to professional standards today, and I would recommend checking out the Tamron 24-70 f2.8 lens. A few more bucks get you a lighter weight camera, the Sony a7R II. This is basically the same sensor, but it's a more modern mirrorless camera, and it connects you to the Sony lineup of lenses, so it has more future potential than the Nikon system does. And I recommend, for starters, the Sony 24-105 f4. If your budget's a little higher, I'm going to have you put more of your budget into the lens. And I'm going to recommend the Sony a7R V, their newest camera, along with the Sony 16-35 f2.8. These produce absolutely amazing results, and the reason this one gets my recommendation is it's 60 megapixels, but the pixel shift feature now works with landscapes, and that will allow you to produce up to 240 megapixel images. It's what I myself would use for landscape photos if I were doing a big gallery exhibit. What if you are a sports photographer? You don't have to be a pro sports photographer, but maybe you have kids or grandkids that are playing soccer or baseball or football. Your smartphone's not going to cut it, but these cameras will produce great results. At $600, I recommend the Canon T6i. Now, it doesn't have to be this specific model. You could pick up a T7i or a T5i or just a T3. It's an example. So there are lots of Canon DSLRs out there at the lower price point that you can find used. The lens is actually more important. I really suggest you find the 18-135 lens. You can buy this as a kit, but if you don't find the camera and that lens together, then go ahead and buy them separately. The total price should be about $600 or less. A step up from that, a very modern camera, a mirrorless camera, the Canon R10, I found to be an excellent entry-level sports camera. It only has 2 kit lenses available for it, but pick up the one with the 18-150 lens. This is going to produce great results, especially for sports outside in the sun, but if you're shooting like an indoor basketball or volleyball game, you're going to start to complain about how noisy your pictures are. That's what people always do. Unfortunately, it gets to be pretty expensive because to improve on that, you need both a faster lens and a full-frame sensor, and that gets expensive. So I'm going to recommend at this fairly high price point the Canon R6 along with the Canon 70-200 f2.8 lens, or a prime lens depending on the sport. If it's basketball or volleyball, you might pick up like a 50 f1.8 or a 50 f1.2, but the 70-200 is a very versatile sports lens. Now, if you have an unlimited budget, you want the ultimate sports lens, what I shoot is the Sony Alpha 1 with the Sony 70-200 G Master Mark II lens. Sometimes I'll add a 1.4 teleconverter, and that will allow me to get fantastic results for just about any type of field sport. What if you want to take pictures of people or even become a professional portrait photographer? There's a lot to this, and it's more technique than gear, which is why I suggest checking out our actual training like Stunning Digital Photography. But here's what I suggest at different price points. The best smartphone for portraits is the iPhone, specifically one of the Pro models. But still, they don't do a great job of rendering skin tones, and the bokeh, the background blur, is fake and can sometimes have flaws. So while this has beaten all the other smartphones, traditional cameras will produce better pictures of people, and you will notice the difference if you shoot side by side. The least expensive suggestion is the Nikon D5300. Again, it does not have to be this specific model. You could find the D5500 or the D5600, whatever you can find at a good price point. But pair it with the Nikon 50mm f1.8G. This will allow you to get beautiful background blur, real bokeh that your smartphone tries to fake but doesn't do a great job of. I know lots of pros shooting this gear and getting paid for it. A step up from that is the full-frame Nikon D610. There are lots of great lenses that you could attach to this, but my suggestion for the first lens would be the Tamron 70-200 f2.8. This is a great versatile rig. Again, lots of high-end professionals use this and get fantastic results. If you have a few more bucks, I would recommend upgrading to the Nikon D750. The D750 is a more serious professional camera than the D610. It gives you faster autofocus, it gives you 2 memory card slots, and generally just feels better in the hands. I'm also recommending you pair it with the newer, more expensive version of that previous lens, the Tamron 70-200 G2. Together, those will run you about $1,800. A step up from that, I'm recommending the Sony A7 IV, a great versatile camera. Weddings, events, this is something professionals can rely on. And you could get the Sony 70-200, either the Mark I or the Mark II. The Mark II is better, but it's also more expensive. Could you also get the Canon R6 or the Canon R5 or many other cameras? Yes, absolutely. You would probably get results that most people would never notice the difference for. But out of all of those at this price point, my favorite personally happens to be the A7 IV. And if you have an unlimited budget, I personally use the Sony Alpha 1 for professional portraiture, along with the 70-200 Mark II or the 50mm f1.2 is one of my favorite Sony portrait lenses. Are these results going to look super different from the D610 that I suggested earlier? Not going to look super different, but it's a powerful, versatile camera that will get more shots in focus in more different situations, such as low light, wedding receptions, or a kid who happens to be running towards you. If you are working in a studio, it has a crazy 1/400th sync speed. So those are the reasons that I think it's the ultimate portrait camera. So which camera should you buy for wildlife? Wildlife has been my favorite since I was about 22 or 23. I photographed and cataloged more than 1,000 species of animals. So this is close to my heart. A lot of people don't want to spend much money. If you could only spend like $250, I suggest you get the Canon little PowerShot Zoom. It's not a great wildlife camera, but it is fun and it is enough to identify those birds at your feeder. And now I'm going to jump up to $1,000 because there really aren't any inexpensive, good wildlife kits that I think are more fun than frustrating. So I'm going to send you to Canon again. I'm going to recommend a used Canon 7D, along with a lens I used for about a decade, the Canon 400mm f5.6. So sharp and capable of producing professional results for under $1,000. If you can spend a little more money, keep that same lens, but upgrade to the newer Canon 7D Mark II. If you want something mirrorless and newer, the Canon R10 is a pretty good wildlife camera, and you can pair it with the new Canon mirrorless lenses, including the 600mm f11. This gets you in at $1,700, but it will produce really fantastic results in a wide variety of situations, and the autofocus system on the R6 for wildlife is great. Like, it can find the eye of a bird in a lot of situations, and that'll help you get more good results. If you had a little more money, you could pair that with the 200 to 500. If you aren't scared by these prices yet, I have good news. You can pick up a used Nikon D500 and a used Nikon 200 to 500 lens for about $2,200. And this is definitely professional grade wildlife equipment. And because that's a zoom, it's easy to learn on. And it's versatile for a wide variety of situations, even some sports. I love the D500. It's got 2 card slots, totally pro. If you can spend a few more bucks, I'm going to send you to the Sony a7 IV. This is one of my recommendations for a versatile all-around camera. So this can do portraits and weddings and sports too, but it's also great for wildlife. And I would suggest pairing it with the Sony 200 to 600 millimeter lens, which is a big and heavy lens, but that's kind of what you have to do for good wildlife photography. And the lens itself is $2,000, and that sounds like a lot, but I found it to be an incredible bargain because of the quality of that lens. Now, my own personal rig is the Sony A1 with the Sony 600 millimeter f4 G Master, and together those will run you about $20K. But that's, I think, the very best results you can get for wildlife photography today. Once again, we're currently having a huge sale at Northrop.photo. All the paperbacks are autographed until basically Christmas, and everything comes with a money-back guarantee. So if you're not happy with your book or video training, just tell me and I'll give you your money back. Thank you for supporting a small business and free videos like these that aren't sponsored by any camera or lens manufacturer. If you have questions about my recommendations, let me know in the comments below. But I do want to say there are lots of other choices that would produce great results also. I'm trying to simplify choices for people because it can get so complex when you start worrying about rolling shutter and buffers and bit depth. Most people are better off just picking a good all-around camera and getting started. So I hope you found it helpful. If you want more camera reviews and tutorials, subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. Thanks for watching. Bye.